Okay, welcome everyone. It's good to see you all again. My name is Paulette LeBlanc, and I'm a faculty member in the School of Information Management at Dalhousie University. Before we start, I wanted to acknowledge that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all Treaty people. Today is our last class for Organizational Management and Strategy here in SIM, and I'm so excited to welcome back 3 of our alum to be with us in our virtual classroom. Today's format will be that each of our alumni will be called up to the screen. They'll introduce themselves for a few minutes, and then once all the introductions are complete, we'll open up the board for questions and answer period. Students can put their questions in the chat and we'll bring them up from the dialog box to the panelists. If you have a question specific for one panelist, I want to make sure you note that in the chat so we know who to direct the question to. Okay, let's get started. I'd like to invite Heather to come up and introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Paulette. This is very exciting and my first panel this way. So I'm speaking to you today from unceded Syilx Okanagan Nation territory, which many of you may know as Kelowna, British Columbia. So it is beautiful and sunny here today, and I hear it's windy there. I'm very sorry to hear that. My name is Heather Behringer. I am now the Chief Librarian and Associate Provost for Learning Services at UBC's beautiful Okanagan campus. I graduated from Dalhousie in the MLIS program then in 2003. And a product of my time, I guess, I immediately walked into a tenure track job at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario. Spent a number of years there, and that's actually where I got really interested in the idea of taking on a management kind of role. And there wasn't really anything available. Academic librarians stick around a long time, and I felt like I was going to need to find a way to move my career differently at that time. So I actually took a job working for a company that was then called YBP Library Services. We did a lot of collections solutions, technical services, and systems integrations. And I was a collection development manager for Eastern Canada for a number of years there, and then was promoted to the role of Canadian National Sales Director for that company. So I loved my time there. I have lots I could say about working in vendor land, if that's something that people are interested in. But I went into that job with a very specific intention, which was to come back to academic libraries having gained some skills in that environment that I wasn't going to get in a typical academic library environment, and be able to bring those to a management role. So it was sort of a way to segue, I guess, into management responsibility. So I took a job at UBC Okanagan as the Deputy Chief Librarian, and I've been there since, that was 2012. So I've been there quite a number of years now. I was Deputy Chief Librarian for a pretty short time. Then I was Interim Chief Librarian, and I became Chief Librarian. We can talk about selection processes sometime if you're interested. But I held that role and continue to hold that appointment. One of my first jobs once I got that role was to raise $40 million and build a new library. So I did raise $40 million with the support of many, many, many people, including our students who contributed $10 million. And then kind of proceeded to design and build a new library, which was incredibly exciting and really, really fun. Once that was finished, I got a sort of second job, that's what everyone says, but I like to think of it as a promotion, to associate provost, and I took on some additional responsibilities supporting synergies between our Center for Teaching and Learning, our academic learning supports, so writing, math, science, supplementary learning, our makerspace facility, and just this past year also took over some responsibility for the Center for Teaching and Learning, supporting faculty. So we are obviously in a transition right now. One of the responsibilities of my portfolio over the past year was also the transition to online and all the supports for faculty and students, and how we would pivot in a weekend to online learning, which I'm sure many of you experienced from the other side. So that's another element of the job that I've been doing. That's a little bit about me in a nutshell, and I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heather. It's wonderful to have you here and join us on the panel. Doug, you're up next.
Thanks so much, Paulette. Like Heather, I am so excited to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. So I'm coming to you from Halifax, Nova Scotia, more specifically from my little home studio where I've spent the last year working. So it's doubled as an office for me in these difficult times. So my current role is I'm actually manager of enterprise security and information management at the Workers' Compensation Board of Nova Scotia. And in fact, I've been in this role for 4 weeks. I just finished my 4th week in role. It's been an incredible 4 weeks, really exciting. I'm learning a lot. I'm really enjoying the people that I work with, the team that I'm leading. It's been fantastic. It's a really interesting, multifaceted team. We're part of a broader enterprise architecture group. And we look at things like monitoring and mitigating cyber threats and ensuring that the organization is adhering to current IT security best practices. We're involved in various initiatives and operations related to data quality and integrity, and a big reason for that is to support good business reporting. So you need good data to have good reports, and that's a key responsibility of the team. We're also involved in a number of other initiatives, so things ranging from release management of internal information management systems, enterprise architecture, as I mentioned, records retention policy, and the list goes on. So it's a really multifaceted, really exciting group to be a part of. And as mentioned, it's been a great first few weeks. Prior to joining the WCB, I worked at ADP, so I spent actually 9 years at ADP Canada, which is really a payroll and HR outsourcing company. So many of you have probably received paychecks at some point in your lives from ADP or issued through our systems. So at ADP, my most recent role was managing the knowledge management team. And the focus of that team was really primarily, we had again a number of different initiatives and responsibilities, but a major one was to essentially author and publish internal processes and then play a strong role in terms of the governance of those processes. So we were working with all kinds of stakeholders from across the business. ADP is a wonderful organization. It's large. The major component of ADP is really out of the US. We worked, of course, with the Canadian division, but I believe it's over 50,000 employees employed by ADP globally. So that was a wonderful opportunity. I started at ADP, as mentioned, about a decade ago as an implementation specialist. So I worked directly with clients implementing their systems and their services. And I kind of moved from small business into major and national clients. And then about halfway through my ADP career, moved into the knowledge management team. So it's been a great time at ADP, great career for me thus far. Again, super excited to be here. Thanks, Paulette, again. And I think I'll pass it back to you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Doug. And again, really excited to have you on the panel. Really interested in your career choice and your career path as you move forward. Okay, and the third panelist coming up is Monique.
Hi, everyone. I'm joining you today from Treaty 1 territory in the heart of the Red River Métis, also known as Winnipeg. So we've got kind of both ends of the country and the center of the country. I know Toronto sometimes says it's the center, but we all know Winnipeg is. That's our Winnipeg underdog joke. I'm very happy to be here, and it's great to have a chance to see some fellow alumni and also hopefully get some really great questions from the students. I am coming to you from the Millennium Library, which is the central library in the Winnipeg Public Library System. I finished my time at DAL in December of 2007 and flew home here. I was born and raised in Winnipeg. Flew home on the Thursday and started my job on the Monday. Having had been interviewed and hired while I was still at DAL the previous summer, I opted to do the thesis option, and so that added one extra term on just because of timelines for the folks I needed to be interviewing and access. And yeah, I think like Heather, I also feel like I'm a little bit of a product of the time. This was late 2007, as I said, but I went directly into a full-time permanent position. And maybe we'll get some questions about precarity coming up later. in my time at WPL, I was hired into the Outreach Services Department, which at that time had a new manager, also a Dal alum, Kathleen Williams, and she was reimagining that small but mighty unit and was looking for someone that had, I guess, a real passion and some knowledge of Indigenous communities and outreach and community development librarianship, and that was definitely my preferred area of work. And so I was with Outreach for about 7 years. I did a 1-year kind of mat leave replacement stint centrally as a youth services coordinating librarian, which gave me some great exposure to just working and managing and coordinating all kinds of things with the branches. I went back to Outreach after that was done for a short amount of time, and then a position came open in our information services unit here at Millennium, which is sort of the flagship reference unit for the library, including local history. But of course, like most public librarians and other folks too, we wear multiple hats. So I'm involved in programming, community development work, some strategic planning with the library. Here at Winnipeg, we're a fairly thin organization. So organizationally, there's just one person in the chart, say, between me and senior management, but functionally, it's really seamless. So I feel like for myself, I enjoy doing sort of some of the tasks of managing, certainly, and a lot of the strategic planning aspect is part of that, but still wanting to be sort of frontline service worker. So this has been a great fit for me, and I'm also happy to talk more about those choices as well. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, we will invite everybody back on the screen. Fantastic. And open it up for questions from the students. If they have some, they can put them in. I think we'll start with the first question that I see, which is to each of you, thinking back to when you first graduated, what did you feel were kind of like the one or two top skills that were most important to you as you kind of developed your career? And has that changed over time? So maybe I'll ask Heather to go first, and we'll cycle through.
I immediately reached forward, Paulette, to unmute myself and realized I'm not supposed to do that. So I think maybe I'll just be, I don't even remember the time. Like, I'm so old now. But what I think now that I wish I had thought would be the most important thing, perhaps, or paid most attention to, was how I managed and dealt with conflict. I think that as I think back, I was pretty nervous about entering into conflict. I didn't really want to deal with it. I don't think anyone loves it, but I have learned so much over the years, and I would argue that all the skills associated with conflict management, empathy and listening and facilitation, that those have been some of the skills I've developed over time that have been most useful to me, and also not to be afraid of the conflict, to actually want to wade in and resolve it with others. That's what I would say.
Excellent. I like that. And Doug, what about you?
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, it was a while back, and I don't know if I mentioned when I graduated from Dalsim. It was 2012. I graduated with my MLIS. But I think communication skills are really critical. I think that regardless of where you are, where you're working, what industry you're interested in, being a good communicator is really important. And that doesn't mean you need to speak eloquently or anything like that. It really comes down to listening. So when you're in a room with somebody or you're in a meeting, listen to what people are saying. Really try to internalize that and put yourself in their shoes, and then in your responses, be intentional and sort of caring about your responses. And I think communication in that sense is a really critical skill that will be important regardless of where you go.
Excellent. And Monique, what do you think?
It's sort of both those things. I mean, the thing that came first to mind for me, though, and it was in the organizational management class at Dal. I remember Fiona Black just talking about managing ambiguity. I don't know. I feel like we spent 3 classes on that. I'm sure it was just one, but yeah, and just becoming really, really comfortable with, shifting the ground, shifting beneath you. And of course, this year, that was really stretching our skills in that way. But I think that that's been true. I think throughout my career, certainly. I mean, we all know anyone working with information, you need to be comfortable with change, and having plans A, B, C, D, E, and be ready to implement them. Depending on which ways things are going. So I definitely think managing ambiguity, and I would really certainly echo Heather, particularly with the, dealing with conflict. I know when I came into my position, I had sort of supervisory responsibility for just two folks, but they were individuals that were several decades older than me. This is my first professional job, first job in libraries, all of that. And now, I mean, it didn't take me long to kind of get my sea legs, but that first year, I wish I had them even just a little bit sooner, and kind of nipped a few things in the bud a little quicker, or address them, right? Yeah, I think everything that the other two panelists mentioned are definitely on my list too.
Yeah, excellent. I think conflict always is that one that nobody really likes, but it's also really good to have, So we do have a question coming up from Teresa. It says, I'd be interested in hearing from everyone about their advice on networking, especially in light of COVID. So maybe Doug goes first.
Sure, I'll give it a shot. It's tough, honestly, in this new environment, and hopefully this, we know it's not permanent, and things are improving. But it is difficult in this environment to network. I think little things like when you're in virtual meetings, putting if you're comfortable, using your camera is helpful. It allows a little bit more of that connection with the people that you're meeting with. Pre-COVID, I was fortunate enough to attend a conference actually in Washington, D.C., KM World. I think it was the end of 2019. And it was wonderful. Attending conferences, if you're able to, is a great way, obviously, to meet people. It's a great way to really just evaluate your own programs and initiatives with others in similar industry. Learn that maybe the way you thought of things wasn't the only way, and then of course, just meeting people. So I know Dow puts on a number of great conferences. Attending those, being an active participant is really great. And then looking for online communities, I think, is another opportunity. I try to be involved in as many as I can. Attending virtual talks or virtual sessions that are made available is a great way to, again, meet people and learn from others.
Excellent. Monique.
Yeah, I mean, this is, such a completely different time that you all are graduating into, and we hope it'll quickly end. But yeah, I would echo what Doug says there. I mean, certainly the networking that I've done through the years has come from kind of a hybrid approach, right? Of participating in committees and associations. A lot of that to begin with, especially after I graduated, but still now. Signing up for conferences. I know that's been one benefit, I think, for me anyway, not having a large pot of PD money to work with. That the conferences have become so much more accessible to go to this past year because the prices has dropped. So many more of us, at least in my close professional community, have been attending things. If somebody says something that you're interested in and you want to learn more afterwards, following up with them. I think, I'm sure people have said it to the students before, but, by and large, overwhelmingly, people that graduate into this profession are really open to people asking them questions, right, including new colleagues. And and the other thing is I do have tried to stay in touch with things that are going on at Dal, which has been a great way to it's my most immediate connection with new graduates, and that's been a great thing too. And yeah, I don't underestimate the value of Twitter. I've met so many phenomenal colleagues that I've never actually just through following, conference hashtags or other similar things that we're interested in. And those relationships have grown into some great opportunities too. So, yeah, really important, but where there's a will, there's a way over the next little while for sure.
Yeah, excellent. Heather, any thoughts on that?
I'm kind of famous for not repeating all the good things that have been said, so I will not. But maybe like 2 small add-ons. One is that I would say from the time I spent as a vendor, when we're back to the real world, that the trade show is a very underutilized way of meeting people. That the vendors in those trade shows know everybody. They also are often hiring. And they tend to be really good connectors. That's their job. So in many cases, if you are willing to approach them and speak about what they do and say you're working on some specific thing, they will say things like, I heard that so-and-so at this other library is also working on that kind of thing. Maybe I should connect you. Would you be open to that? Let me see if. So they tend to like to do that kind of work and are usually very social people. The other thing I guess I would say that someone helped me with once is that I am actually a closet introvert. I am not an extrovert, and I do not like networking. I hate small talk. I'm very bad at it. And so what I realized very quickly was that a lot of the events that are set up at some of the conferences are not really great for people with my inclinations. They exhaust me. Just having to put myself out there over and over in groups and things like that is really tiring and uncomfortable. And so I would do things like go in with a goal to meet 2 new people in a day and then cut myself some slack at the end of the night when I just want to go home to bed and sleep, because there is a lot of fake it till you make it in some of these things. And so if you're introverted like me and it's a challenge sometimes to engage, I urge you, the world is kind of designed, or this world is designed a little bit for more extroverted people, or people are just really comfortable putting themselves out there. Try. And most people are very kind about it, and then cut yourself a break if at the end of the night you're exhausted and you need to go back to your hotel room and kind of just chill.
Yeah, really good point. In fact, I'm an extrovert, and this working at home is just so hard, but I've got a little introvert in me, and she's just been having a great time the last year, right? Just leave me alone. Let me be in my basement, right? We have another question coming in from Rachel, and she said, why did you decide to leave the private sector? So for Doug, and what are the main differences between working in the private versus public? So I think we could all add to that, but Doug, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've only got 4 weeks of experience to draw from for the public sector. I think the first part's easier to answer, probably, is why I decided. Quite honestly, it was an opportunity to do something new and to, I think, challenge myself in a different way. At my previous role, we did a lot of great work, and I know the team continues to do great work, and we really created some foundation to build on. And so, from my perspective, it made sense to look for or move to another opportunity should one be presented. And so, in that sense, it wasn't necessarily anticipated, but it did arise as an opportunity for me, and just given the nature of the work, the opportunity to learn something a little new and something different than what I was doing before, I just thought it was the right timing on a sort of a personal level, I think. Differences, quite honestly, I think I don't know enough yet to really answer that. I think that there's really a lot of similarities. I find the organizations are have a lot of commonality in the sense that the goal is really, it's client focused. We want to support our clients. Everything we do is driven to that end. And so I can't say that there's a great difference that I've observed as of yet between the private and the public sector. Not to say that won't change, but thus far, my focus has always been in a leadership position, looking at what the team is responsible for, helping the individuals within the team succeed, helping the team on the whole succeed, and then moving obviously towards the company objectives and making sure that our team has an important role there. Has been the focus on this, both of my leadership positions, my two recent leadership positions. that was a bit of a cop-out. I'm sorry. That's what I've got so far.
Excellent. Heather, do you want to add to that? Just thinking about your different roles.
No, I guess the one thing I could say is that, you know, to be totally blunt, one of the reasons I left the private sector, I had planned to do that. I intended that to be a short stint. But also, I don't think I loved the direction the private sector was taking in library vectors at that time. And the writing was on the wall that the very kind of small family feeling company that I was part of was going to be bought. It is now an EBSCO company. And I was not as excited about working for a really large multinational. So that was part of the reason I made the decision to go at the time that I made the decision to go. But I can absolutely appreciate what Doug is saying. And I think that one of the things that was really interesting to me was the transferable skills that you can take from the private sector to the public sector. You know, sales and fundraising, not that different. A lot of the principles apply. So.
Excellent. And Monique, what do you think?
I have no experience working in the private sector. That's what I think. But yeah, I certainly do, you know, fellow Dal alum that I'm still in contact with have made that choice and have also moved back and forth. And I think in terms of succeeding in those sectors, to me, I mean, it seems like the formula is pretty much the same. You know, a strong skill set's a strong skill set. And of course, in terms of, you know, the differences, we can vary so widely, say, depending on certainly which company you're working for in the private sector, but certainly which province you're working in Canada, or whether you're working for the feds or a municipality, and who happens to be in power, right? You know, because I've seen wide swings just in my 12 years here in Manitoba. It's like working in a different place sometimes, depending on the 4-year period. So, yeah, I think that's about what I have on it.
Excellent. All right, I know we have another question coming in. Yep. Do you fear stepping into a managerial role? And was it a natural progression for you or a challenge? Oh, good question. Who'd like to start? Monique, do you want to start?
Well, again, I need to come at this from a different angle. I'm someone who has made the sort of personal choice because I know I won't be leaving Winnipeg. My partner is tenured at the University of Manitoba, so we're not going anywhere. And I don't want to. It's the place I've sort of keen to spend the rest of my working life contributing to and making better. But my personal choice is that I've chosen not to apply for management positions in our organization. Now, WPL is a little different because we're not governed by our board. The board is a kind of advisory group. We're firmly kind of entrenched within the bureaucracy of the municipal government here. So we're a division of the department of the city of Winnipeg. So the structure is a little bit more like an academic library, kind of, you know, in terms of, say, look and feel of the website and HR policies and all of that kind of stuff. It also means that the senior management team of the library is, as a result, much smaller than it would be in many other systems, because they play somewhat of a different function, but also some similar functions as they would in other library systems. And it's not a position that I have been interested in taking after seeing it up close. I love my colleagues who do that work, but it's particularly hard because you're sort of getting squeezed from both ends in that position very much, and they have a lot of responsibility and not a lot of autonomy. And given that we are sort of thinner here as an organization, there's so many, and we're encouraged to, opportunities to dip in and muck around and contribute at levels that would normally go to somebody several branches higher up the org chart than what my position is. And so I feel like for me, I've landed in this very nice spot. Certainly if things change in the organization, I might make a different choice, right? But I think sort of my message to students is, like, you're going to make your career decisions based on a number of factors: what's going on in the workplace, what's going on in your personal life, the political climate, where you're working, all kinds of things, right? And I would encourage people to think about, what you can contribute in the position that you're in. And if you truly can't contribute in the way that you want to, then maybe it is time to be looking. But if you are, like, I personally feel like I contribute a lot. I get to take a lot of chances here, do a lot of things, have a higher profile than maybe some folks at this level in the organization would. And that's the case. And so I don't feel the need to move up, right? And to have the title and do that. So I think it's a really personal choice. I'm all for, people who say they're interested in leading from the center. I think that's wonderful. I think we need a little bit more of that. We obviously need phenomenal people leading our organizations in those formal roles too, for sure. But the truth is, there's only so much of those positions. There's only so many of them. And we need folks that are staying not in those positions to be phenomenal leaders too, right? So yeah, for me, that's been the personal choice that I've made halfway in. I expect it'll stay like that, but you never know.
Excellent. Yeah, I sometimes that's just makes more sense for the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heather, what's your thoughts?
I guess I would say that I hope and encourage everyone to have a healthy fear of stepping into any managerial role, because you are being asked to make decisions that affect other people, and you should be a little afraid of that because it keeps you honest, I think, and it prevents you from being arrogant and kind of just assuming you know everything. So did I fear it? I'm going to say yes in a healthy way. Because I really did want to have the opportunity to make change, and I felt that was a thing that I wanted to do. So I completely appreciate what Monique is saying, and you're right, we need leaders at all levels. So I'm very excited when we have people who lead from all levels in the organization. I really did want a line management role. That was a goal that I've had a long time, and it utilizes the skills that I have developed and the skills that I bring to the workplace, actually, I think. Pretty well. So I'm quite good at organizing people and influencing people and helping people be empowered, which is what I really want them to do. I prefer not to be out front. I like to put those doing the work out in front. And so I think that's something that I'm pretty good at. But healthy fear, that's what I would say.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, I think we have another question coming in for Doug. We'll pause while it comes up on the screen. Question for everyone. In this environment, there's a lot of competition with skills. Do you think that SIM imparts on us that candidates tend to undervalue in themselves? That's a good question, actually. Tough one. What do you think, Doug?
That is a really good question, somewhat complicated by the undervalue component. So I think that maybe something that comes to mind is within IM and within the program, something I really appreciated was it's not a technical program in the sense that it's not an IT program. For example, you're not becoming a networking expert or whatever the case might be, but you do get exposure to that, and you have the ability, I think, or the skill set to relate to that, to a technical environment, or to talk a talk when it comes to technical issues, but bring those back into sort of a real world problem solving type scenario, if you will. So I think the ability to sort of do a bit of that business analysis, if you will, to sort of understand a little bit about what technical things need to happen in order to achieve some meaningful outcomes for people or for problems that you face within an organization is something that the program offers that maybe we're not always aware of in terms of something that we're acquiring or a skill set that we're acquiring. So that's my initial, I think, gut reaction to that question. it is a good one and a tough one.
Yeah.
Tough one. Monique, do you want to add something?
I echo what Doug said there, and the anecdote I mentioned in the chat. I had an anecdote. So after, during one of the summers that I was in Halifax and looking for summer work, I ended up getting a job working for sort of the policy shop of the Department of Health for Nova Scotia. And they were working on streamlining and revamping the way they did strategic planning in the organization. And so they were looking for someone. They had posted for a Master's of Public Admin student, right? But the job description had like information every fourth word in it. You know, it's like maybe an MPA person could do this, not to denigrate the MPA. No, they're wonderful, but like, you know, but they really need somebody who knows how to deal with information. And yeah, and it was great. It was probably still one of the most fun interviews of my life. Because it ended up flipping it, and they're like, well, this is interesting. What made you want to apply for it? And, you know, kind of holding up the job description and saying, well, this is what we learn at SIM. And, you know, it combines organizational management skill, you know, with, you know, having a deep understanding of information and the way it flows and how people use it and the, you know, potential pitfalls there. Yeah, and I remember they phoned back 20 minutes after the interview. And when I left that summer, the person who had hired me let me know that, yeah, they had interviewed 2 MBA candidates and 1 MPA candidate and 1 librarian, and that's who they hired. And I just think it was a great example. I also think it's a great advice for students because you're automatically widening the pool of jobs that you can imagine yourself working in or applying for, right? So if they're mentioning information more than 2 or 3 times in a job application, start thinking about what you can offer, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, we have another question coming in from Erica. She says it's a question for Doug, but I think we can all chime in. How difficult was it to start a new position during COVID? Okay, and what were your expectations around communication with your peers?
It's less difficult being disadjusted, I think, at this point to sort of the new environment. You know, having worked from home, you know, remotely. I didn't work from home really much at all prior to the pandemic, and I didn't like it at first at all. Somewhat ironically, because I too am an introvert, but I think you know, you adapt. You just have to. So you adjust to your way of working and your patterns and your habits. But it is still challenging. I think, you know, being used to simple things like getting on conference calls, you know, doing video chats like this today. I wasn't as accustomed to those before. I'm pretty accustomed to them now. I'm probably on 3 or 4 hours a day. So it's challenging in that sense. Meeting people is difficult. You know, getting on these virtual calls and not really feeling that connection, I think, to the individuals that you're meeting for the first time is a challenge. But it's really just about making the best of it and, you know, doing your best to connect with people as best you can. You don't have the opportunity to just run into people at the office. And so you kind of have to be a bit more action-oriented when it comes to setting up meetings, like identifying, you know, the people that you need to meet in order to do your job well. Talking with your team and with your leader to understand, okay, you know, who do I set calls up with, and then you do it, and you have those conversations. So in that sense, it's challenging. In another sense, it's convenient because you can just hop on a call and a video call, and you can schedule a lot of them. You can fill your day if you need to with conversations, which can be tiring, but it's a great way to meet people, of course, and build those connections that you need in order to be successful. So yeah, it's challenging, but again, you just have to sort of make the best of it and use the tools at your disposal to do so.
How many of us want to admit that we've been in 2 or 3 meetings at the same time? Because it's not good. Not good. Heather, you have a lot of people working for you and with you. How have you kind of handled this transaction due to COVID and going online?
Yeah, this has been incredibly difficult. And I think the most difficult thing, and maybe this isn't specifically about communication, but it's relevant, is that I am so mindful of people's mental health and people's well-being right now in this situation, childcare responsibilities, and all of these there's this real conflation of personal and professional life and what that means for people. Everyone, for everything from, your pet coming to your meeting all the way up to trying to manage home emergencies, kids out of school. We're on lockdown again in BC. So the constant uncertainties that people are facing. And I have noticed for myself as well, just the need to, I was having headaches from being online for long periods of time during the day. I think people making assumptions about the length of the day. Oh, you're not commuting, so I can schedule a meeting at 7:30. You can do that in a different environment, or at 6 p.m. or whatever. I mean, these things over lunch, and just these kinds of considerations about how much time people can spend in front of a screen. I think it's not the same. This has been incredibly difficult for, I think, all of us. So, we're trying really hard to just be mindful of people's need to maybe take more breaks than we would normally have them take, even in a unionized environment, to be really thoughtful that I think we should be more flexible in an environment where sometimes we're not or haven't been in the past as flexible, and trying to make case-by-case decisions for people. So anyway, I guess it's just, for me, I had a doctor tell me, it would really help you to spend less time on screen. Well, I have like 100 reports, so I can't do that. And yet I've had to find ways to do that, because if I'm not functional or working optimally, then neither can I be there for other people. Plus, I need to set an example that if I am not well, I need to take breaks. Other people should be taking breaks and be feeling okay to take those breaks. So I guess just the whole human thing that has come to this.
Yeah, our whole mental health capacity is just totally changed because of this virtual kind of world. We have another question for Heather and Monique. Both of you mentioned dealing with conflict head on. Could each of you touch on what you wish you had known about dealing with conflict in your first year of employment? Good question. We love conflict. Heather, you want to try first?
Go ahead, Heather. Yeah.
I'm going to say something really unpopular, probably. So I guess here's what I'm going to say. I started a tenure track position. I had so many hopes and dreams going into the workplace about collegial governance and what my perception was of universities as these bastions of liberal thinking. And, I wasn't as familiar with like the neoliberal problems of universities. I was much more wide-eyed and excited to contribute as a colleague in this environment where everyone would be treated equally as a peer, and it was going to be amazing. And I did have wonderful colleagues, but the reality is that the power structures that are in all organizations are in universities too, and that the tenure processes, while they are absolutely peer-driven, are also, they also have a whole lot of power dynamic included in them and a lot of issues that just are really political and difficult. So while I think it's important to face that conflict head on, I also think you have to do it with tact and diplomacy and thoughtfulness and pick your battles just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the picking your battles, but for me, it really was dealing with it. And I know, now I, don't enjoy it, but I hesitate far less, if at all, I think, because I think it's going to be the other end of it, coming out the other side of it is going to be better than whatever's going on now. Might look different, might not be, I attended the Nelly retreat a number of years ago, back in 2010, that Northern Exposure Leadership Institute that had taken place. And the one thing that I really took away from that was the conflict exercises that they had us do. So every group member in your group, after learning about how to responsibly share, feelings, thoughts, feedback, listening, all of that stuff, we had to say, go to each group member individually and have a conversation about something that they were doing that was bothering us. And yeah, and I was just horrified. Oh, I felt sick like the hour before we had to do it. But it was really great because it was just that exposure to it. It was. I remember I came back afterwards and I'm like, we're dealing with this, this, and this. Let's go. But yeah, I think get some training on it. Talk to people who you believe do it well. Ask them how they've learned how to do it. If you're a formula person, make it up as a formula in your head. I need to say this kind of thing, then this kind of thing, then this kind of thing, whatever it is. But just start, and you just save yourself so much grief, and your colleagues too, right? People will see that in other ways possible, hopefully.
I really like that idea of everybody having to go around and speak with one person at a time about conflict, and I feel I've just put a new exercise in my class next year. So that was helpful. Okay, we have one more question. What are the skills hiring organizations are now specifically looking for post-COVID? And which of these skills do you think should be continued even after things go back to normal? Doug, do you want to try that one first?
I'll give it a shot. Another skills question. It's a good one. So I'm not sure that at least in my experience, the skills pre, during, post COVID have changed too much. I think it really does come down to the role that you're applying for and what relevant skills or what skills are relevant to it. I think, geez, I hate to echo what I've said earlier, but communication is important and transparency. I think one difference, when you have so much remote work, that physical connection isn't there, where at the very least you kind of know where everybody is and what they're doing, because you can kind of see there's your office space and you can see what's going on. So people are within their own environments and doing their own thing. So communicating, what you're doing within your role, and the ability to do that effectively and be transparent about your activities is, I think, important. Probably more so now than it was before. But truthfully, I'm not sure that, again, it's really role dependent, and I'm not sure that skill sets that employers are looking for necessarily changes. Another panelist might have a different perspective on that, but that's my feeling, is that it really would be role dependent and not necessarily different because of the environment we're in at this point in time.
Yeah, really good point. Heather, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I actually agree completely with what Doug just said. I don't think that that it's changed a lot from that perspective in terms of what we'd be looking for. But I will say that in terms of what, maybe it's not skills that should be continued, but we have learned so much about conducting effective meetings that are virtual meetings over this year, I think. I'm not saying we've always done it great or done it well, but for us, we have 2 campuses. Sorry, my fire alarm keeps testing today. We have 2 campuses, and this really has taught us how to communicate inter-campus better than we used to. I'm just going to.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Monique, anything on this?
Yeah, I echo the same thing. I don't think the skill sets have changed that much. I think, communication has obviously been kicked up, and the need to focus on that. I would say going forward, I would hope that employers are looking for that ability to manage in ambiguous times more than ever. Because, fingers crossed this doesn't happen again in the next 10 years. But I think now everyone's feeling anything is possible. What could happen, So being able to manage through ambiguity. And I think in the public library sector anyway, COVID has really laid bare or highlighted all the inequities that we always knew were in society, right? But they've just been, because we've seen exactly who's been falling through the cracks here in different ways, in different contexts. And I think that, we are certainly, looking for colleagues who have a passion and a knowledge the skill set, but also the humility to engage really authentically in anti-oppression work, and who can also get things done in that area. And that's a whole other session. But I think that, at least in the public library context, is incredibly important, because we will be dealing with the fallout socially from COVID for several years at least, right? And of course, that work will be important always, but especially the next couple of years is going to be a real challenge to get our communities back on some equitable footing. So that's my thought.
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. Okay, final words of advice for the students. What's your final word of advice? These guys, they're getting ready to graduate in May. They're off to the job search. Final words, Doug.
Sure. So I have a prop or a diagram for this. So this is something that I saw in my first manager's office, actually, at ADP. It's just a little poster, and hopefully you can see it. Let me know. So this, you probably heard something like this before, but it really struck me when I saw it, and was something that's really stuck with me. So it obviously shows, your comfort zone in the center here, and then outside of it is where the magic happens. So really what this is about to me is just continuing to challenge yourself and not be afraid of, feeling like, oh, this job might require, chairing meetings or public speaking, and that might be something that, you're afraid of. Don't limit yourself in that respect. You're going to find, I think, that when you challenge yourself, that's when you get the most back. That's when you can be really proud about what you've accomplished, and you can really influence others and achieve greater things. So I think that's something that stuck with me, and hopefully, you can keep in mind as you explore the opportunities that are out there.
Nice. Monique.
Notwithstanding, that's absolutely where the magic happens. I'd also kind of add, go with your gut. If something feels like it's wrong, like listening to that really deep gut, not to be all Oprah about this, but everyone knows what that is, right? If something just feels off, just listen to your gut. It's really hard to sometimes, but it's often, it'll take you where you need to go. And ask for help. If the process becomes frustrating, it may not, right? But if the process becomes frustrating, ask for help. Reach out to your colleagues. You're going to have a strong group of alumni to reach out to, if no one else, right? And continually, tweak what you're doing in terms of your job search, whether it's your CV or how you interview. Pace yourself and take care of yourself. I think Heather sets obviously a really great example for her reports. You're not going to be able to contribute well as an employee, never mind the other aspects of your life, unless you're taking care of yourself too. So I think, what Doug said and those things.
Nice. And Heather.
I'm going to say one practical thing. I agree with everything that's been said, so echo. And then on top of that, just a practical thing, something that I did and I've continued to do it through my life, actually, as I've thought about other jobs, is to maintain a skills inventory and a values inventory. And I keep it in a journal. That's sort of dorky, but I do it anyway, and kind of write down, like, what are the skills that I know that I bring that I'm really proud of, and what are the values that I espouse that are really important to me in an organization or just in life in general. Because the skills inventory comes in handy when I try to write my cover letter and I try to align myself. And my values inventory comes in really handy when I start going into the organization and trying to figure out if I could be happy there. Because, I spend 10 hours a day at work, and probably a lot of us do, many more sometimes. And if you're going to spend that much time at work, you really want to work for an organization. Might not be perfect. We all got issues, but that at least you feel is in line with the values that are really important to you. If those are out of sync, you will just not.
Yeah, excellent. I want to thank all three of you for coming today. so much of what you've said has really been reflected in the course. And I almost wish that I should have started the course with all of you in January and then brought you back at the end and just let students ask questions like for hours on end, because of all the things that you talk about is so relevant to things we've talked about throughout the whole year. So, on behalf of the students, on behalf of me, we really appreciate you taking the time to come today and be part of this panel. And share your experiences with them as they start their career. Just before we hang up from this, I want to introduce the students to Jenny, who wants to come up and just say a few words. You're going to see Jenny in a couple days or next week. So she just wanted to introduce herself to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny. I am the Career and Resilience Coach with the MBA, and I've been asked to come and speak to you about your job search in this pandemic and resilience. And there's so many things from the discussion today that we're actually going to be bringing into the workshop. A few points I want to say. There was a question about if students undervalue themselves. And in my experience, working 20 years as a career coach and now as a career counselor, absolutely, 100%. And that's what we're going to address in the workshop. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health. I'm a trained counselor, so we're also going to talk about tips that you can manage uncertainty. I love the idea of we're going to find strategies to seek out where the magic is happening, right? And we're going to have tips on job search. I'm going to share with you the advice from employers. I'm going to share with you success strategies for other students. We're going to talk a little bit about dealing with uncertainty. And I love that you mentioned, and we're also going to do a skills inventory and a values inventory. So you're going to walk away understanding the value that you have, the value that what you've learned in school and how you're going to take it with you. And we're going to bring all of these wonderful pieces of advice into our session. I'm really informal. We'll do half an hour, probably some slides, and then we're going to open it up and we're going to really make it a workshop so that you can leave with tools, tips, and understanding the biology of stress. So you can survive this next 6 months. I look forward to it.
Sounds good. I'd like to go.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So appreciate it. Thank you to the students for being part of this and part of the course. And next year, we'll do it all face to face.
Bye.